Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you as always for being here. Welcome back. Let's go ahead and move on in Hot Rat to the next track here on the album, on our listen of the album. We're going to move on into the Gumbo variations, which can I tell you, Gumbo's pretty good, especially on a cold morning, a cold day, a cold evening. You got the Gumbo that has like more stuff in it, like a little bit more rice and everything. And then you got the Gumbo that's a little more soupy. Honestly, I kind of prefer it with more stuff in it. I'm thinking about it. But as Zappa is about to show us, there are a variety of ways you can make it. So let's go ahead and give the Gumbo variations a listen. We'll talk about it after. Let's go. Dropped out everything. It's like rocking out. What a dropout. Ooh. How do you want your gumbo? Do you want it with meat? Do you want it filled up? Do you want it more stewy and soupy? Or do you want your own customized brand of gumbo? Whichever you want, they serve it up to you. Uh, woo! There was a lot going on in that one. That one takes a second to process. So you basically have this long vehicle for different solos. First, you're gonna have Ian with the saxophone, just screeching out this kind of rusty saxophone solo, which we're gonna talk about. Then you have the return of Don Sugarcane Harris on the violin, and then you have a little bit of Zappa before there's a little bit of a break, a little bit of a dropout, which I really liked because then you have the drum and bass soloing just for a bit. That's going to be Max Bennett on the bass on this particular track, and then you have Paul Humphrey on the drums on this one. I always have to make sure I talk about the right musician because throughout the album there's different drummers, there's different bass players, etc. So I want to make sure I get the names right and the people right on each specific track before it returns later on and then ends with a little bit of a boom. This one had a lot going on. Obviously, the playing itself is just unimaginable. It's out of this world. It's really cool. Getting back to like each of the solos. So first, like I said, we have Ian Underwood on the saxophone playing solo, and this is gonna sound kind of weird, but it's just where my mind takes me sometimes. As I was listening to his solo, as I was listening to the music itself, it kind of reminded me of don't laugh at me. It kind of reminded me of Sanford and Son because I couldn't help but think of this kind of junkyard blues jazzy fusion that we have going on, and that was more enunciated here with Ian's saxophone playing than really anywhere else. But as a note, the production throughout this album has kind of made me think about that. I really like the raw and rough approach that they've kind of taken on this album. It's not very polished, and it doesn't need to be. It's rough around the edges for tone's sake. It actually works very well within the music and the drive of it all. So coming back to the Gumbo variations, like there's work being done listening to Ian. There's maneuvers being had, but it's kind of junky. It sounds like the saxophone he's playing on isn't like some polished up, I don't know, $10,000 instrument. I don't know how much saxophones usually cost. Just work with me here. But it sounds like a second hand, maybe dented in one side kind of instrument. Like there's something rough about it. But I like that in the way that it plays in the music here. He gets a very unique kind of buzzy tone at certain points. Like he puts a little bit of vibrato, I guess. I don't know exactly what it would be called in, saxophone terms, in brass terms. But like he's probably going like really quickly on the saxophone. And the way that it comes out here is kind of like a very distressed, alarming, slightly distorted sound. There's something kind of uniquely tangible about the tone that he gets out of there. And of course, the musicianship around him himself is really nice as well. Then you have Mr. Sugarcane Harris on the violin that comes in. I want to say probably about here. Now, Sugarcane really, really brings the heat. I'll tell you one thing as well. I mentioned during the track that it sounded like there was maybe a little bit of some sort of distortion on his violin playing. As I was hovering above his name on the personnel on Wikipedia, it actually says that Mr. Sugarcane Harris was an American blues and rock and roll violinist and guitarist. He is considered a pioneer in the amplification of the violin. So that actually makes a lot of sense as to why his violin sounds the way it does. Because obviously it doesn't sound like a violin you would hear perhaps in chamber music or a classical track. Like, it sounds distinctly rock and roll. So it actually makes a lot of sense as to why he is here and playing here, you know? And actually looking at who he's played with, he's also played with Little Richard and the Mothers of Invention, Frank Zappa, obviously, and a few others there. So I just thought that was a really nice kind of like sound, once again, kind of in my mind, portraying this rough around the edges, but still many diamonds to be had kind of sound. Then Zappa comes in kind of briefly. He definitely doesn't play as long as the others, but even though he doesn't play as long, if I'm being honest, his part was my favorite listening to him. I just really enjoy how he plays. I enjoy the sounds he makes. There's just a lot of, once again, diversity in the music itself, and I just really enjoyed his playing there. Very nice style. I don't know exactly the timestamp it was, but after Zappa's solo, the music drops out for a moment, and we're just left with the drum and bass. And I like how basically those three members had gotten a solo spot, and for just a moment, we're basically giving a solo spot and some due time and respect to the drums and bass here. That's a great rhythm, by the way. Love how we're getting down those rolls, and then eventually the snare is brought in, so you have that really nice organic build-up in the rhythm where it's like, and then it's, that was bad drumming in my mouth, but you kind of get the point, I think. And then eventually it just all chaotically comes to a close and a crash and a bang. That was an intense track. I will tell you, it's not a favorite. If I'm being honest, I did feel that the first two solos went on a little bit too long, and I didn't necessarily love the actual sound of Ian's saxophone. Like, I liked how it sounded thematically and within the track, but it was a bit grating, if I'm being honest, with you guys and with myself. So I don't love this track as much, and like I said, I do feel like it went on a little bit too long. Like, I didn't feel... Whenever I mention like a long song, a song going on for however many minutes, to me it always has to make use of that time, be worth that time. And I felt like some of that could have been a little bit cut out, but that's just me. That's just personal preference. But otherwise, nice little track here. Well, maybe not so little. Let me see if there's any interesting information on this particular track here. It says the Gumbo Variations also is a jam performance that features a tenor saxophone from Underwood, intricate electric violin by Don Harris, as well as a guitar solo by Zappa. Yep, that's exactly what I said. The 1987 CD issue contains a longer version of this track, which, like I mentioned before in the last video, this version is 12 minutes 50 seconds. The CD version is 16:55. Now, do those extra 3 or so minutes make it worth it? I don't know. Anyways, hey, let me know what you guys thought of the track. You can let me know in the comments down below. You can follow me on Twitter, support the channel on Patreon. Thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate you, and have a wonderful rest of your day, guys. Bye.